Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ben Jamal. I'm the director of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and we are delighted to co-host tonight's event with the British Palestinian Committee, of which I'm also a member. For the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, this is the second day of a week of action. We have folded around Nakba Day on the 15th, culminating in the march in London on Saturday. Now, to take part in the Week of Action, you can head to the Week of Action page on PSC's website. You can find the link to that in the chat, and then you can click the images to take an action every day. And we urge you to do that. And remember to check back on the page for each day's important action. So as I say, welcome to this event. Tonight, we mark the Nakba, and we mark it not as a moment of collective trauma, enduring in memory but past, but as an unbroken, ongoing catastrophe. And we gather together at a moment, as you know, when the roots of that catastrophe, the Zionist project for the erasure of the Palestinian people, is now manifesting itself in front of all of our eyes, nakedly, with unashamed brutality, into an open project of genocide. So tonight we mark and we celebrate, even in the face of genocide, the ongoing refusal of the Palestinian people to succumb to erasure, to continue to endure and to resist. Tonight we also recognize that that ongoing resistance, which is the necessary cornerstone of eventual liberation, is not sufficient for that liberation. Liberation will also require solidarity from people of conscience across the globe, people like yourself, a solidarity that begins as an act of empathy, a recognition of the truth of the suffering and oppression of a fellow human being, that impels that simple declaration: we see you, we stand with you. But a solidarity that, to be meaningful, must lead to action, to end the complicity of governments, public bodies, companies and corporations, without whose support our oppression could not continue. Many of us speaking tonight are British Palestinians. We know that Palestinian history is also British history, and we understand the breadth and depth of Britain's complicity. Every Palestinian is a child of the Nakba. Every Palestinian has their Nakba story, their account of how the catastrophe that befell their people has impacted upon their life. I am always reminded at this time of the year of my great uncle Shibli, who in 1921 came to London as part of a delegation of Palestinians to meet with Winston Churchill, who was then the Secretary of State for the colonies. They came to lobby for the British government to overthrow the Balfour Declaration issued 4 years before. He, my uncle Shibli, along with my grandparents and all of my extended family, were forced into exile in 1948 and died in that exile. During the year that delegation spent in London, they held the first ever pro-Palestine rally in Hyde Park, at which my uncle Shibli spoke, calling for the British government to recognise the collective rights of his people. On Saturday, 104 years later, I will be speaking at our march in London, calling on our current government to end its complicity, a complicity manifested in the ongoing military support, extending way beyond the provision of weaponry, diplomatic, economic and political support that has sustained itself, even, as I say, as Israel is naked and clear about its genocidal intent. So tonight, as Palestinians, we remember history, we confront the ongoing injustice, we reassert our will to resist the plans for our erasure, to reassert the truth that we exist, that we resist, and we will return. So I want to hand over now to my co-host, Sara Husseini, for her opening remarks.
Thank you, Ben. I'm really glad to be able to be here and honoured to be able to co-host this online session with PSC. And just reflecting on what you said, and obviously put so beautifully, but also aptly, we just thinking about this week in Nakba week and knowing that, the Nakba was not a single event. It's something that's been going on in various ways and forms, both before and since 1948. And still, we know all of that, but I don't think any of us could have really imagined where we'd be today. 18 months into a genocide, into the massacre of so many of our family and friends and colleagues in Gaza, and now the calculated and deliberate starvation, with none of the world's powers, or particularly those here in the West, taking action to stop it. And actually, on the contrary, right, many of the world powers being an active partner in these atrocities, and Britain really being at the forefront of that. So I'm glad we're able to be here today and as you say, resist in the face of what is one of the darkest, undoubtedly the darkest chapters in our history as Palestinians. My name is, as Ben said, is Sara Husseini. I'm a British Palestinian from Jerusalem originally. My grandmother was she was a Khalidi, born in the Khatamon neighborhood of Jerusalem in 1927, which Israel then occupied, or was occupied during the Nakba in 1948. She then went on to live with my grandfather's family after they got married, the Husseini side of the family in Sheikh Jarrah. And when Israel occupied the eastern part of the city in 1967, my grandparents, who at the time were in Amman, were unable to return to Jerusalem. And my own father at that point was 15 years old. Now, the first time he then came back to Palestine was in 1994 with a British passport after having married my mother. So the colonial irony there is also not lost on me. And I mentioned my grandmother just because she was really the matriarch of our family. She died in the end in Amman in 2020, but she never stopped working in service of Palestine. She, telling us the stories of our history, preserving our heritage through. She wrote a book on the art of Palestinian embroidery. She used to put on exhibitions, meetings, performances. And she even edited the diaries of her own father, who was the mayor of Jerusalem in the 1930s and had been exiled by the British. And she was working on that well into her 80s. So I always try and draw inspiration from her to keep going. As Ben mentioned, I'm also director of the British Palestinian Committee, where our aim is to ensure that Palestinians here in Britain are heard in decision-making spaces across British public life, to be able to assert our presence in the face of the attempts to silence and repress that all of us know only too well, and to really bring the wealth of experience and expertise that we have as a community in service of our freedom, justice, and accountability. So, as I say, I'm really glad we've got the space for this evening, for us to come together as Palestinians to reflect, to grieve, to mark the Nakba and recognise its continuation today, but also to really renew our determination to keep existing, to keep resisting. And for those of us who are joining us in solidarity, who play such an important role, to be able to join with us and share in this time with us. Now, we've got 4 incredible guest speakers today, all of whom I know are very busy and have made time to be with us, and I'm really grateful for that. And so before I just pass to Ben to introduce our first guest, I'd like to ask you all to join us in a moment of silence to remember all of our people in Gaza and across Palestine, those we've lost to Israel's genocide in the most unjust and horrific of ways, and those who continue to exist and resist, the medics, the journalists, the first responders, the teachers, the neighbours, mothers, daughters, sons, brothers, children. So let's take a moment now. Thank you. Okay, with that, Ben, I'll pass to you to introduce our first guest.
Thank you, Sara. And I'm really delighted to welcome back to a PSC platform and a BPC platform the performance poet Dana Dajani. Dana uses her theatrical background to bring her spoken word pieces to life whilst addressing various themes of social justice through her characters. Part spoken word, part one-woman show. She employs gesture, character, and a simple scarf to transport audiences through different themes, personas, and perspectives. She's performed in global icons of culture such as the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, the Sydney Opera House. As a creative influencer, she's hosted and performed for a whole range of exclusive brands, including Van Cleef and Arpels, Swarovski, Damas, and many others. She was honoured as Emirates Women Artist of the Year, received the Young Arab Award for Entertainment in 2016, and was recognised by Stylist Arabia as one of the 50 most influential and inspirational women in the United Arab Emirates. Dana, we're delighted to welcome you this evening.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Sara. Thanks to PSC and BPC for continuing all of your action and for hosting these events online and on the ground. I'm going to share a poem this evening called Love Letters from Palestine for now, and share another poem to end. A lot of my work is rooted in themes of social justice and in commemoration of Palestine and keeping our culture alive. Our culture is what has been passed on from our ancestors. Our songs, our poems, our dabke, our food, our art, our tatriz, all of these keep Palestine alive in us. All of these anchor us to the imagery, the sensations, the rituals of jdudna, of our ancestors, and all of that comes from their time on the land. So when we keep them around us, we keep alive the proud expression of who we are and where we come from. This poem is an act of defiant preservation of our history, and I dedicate it to jdudna, لأرضنا وشهدائنا. It's called Love Letters from Palestine. And it's in the character of a hajjah. They call me Nakba, named for the catastrophe born on the same day as I welcome 77 years fighting the threat of genocide has left me unspooled like the thread I use to embroider pillows and thobes with passion and the hope that one day I will again feel at home on this land that my grandfather tilled with his hands under the umbrage of a gold leaf dome. And all I've inherited is internal displacement, like my gut in my throat when I hear of olive trees, older than you and me by centuries, uprooted like so many families, relinquished to refugee camps where there is no defense. Though in the West Bank, we live restrained by a fence, thick enough to drown out the sounds of our sorrows and muffle the marching beat of endless feet, martyred in neat piles which the media sweeps so slyly under the rug of humanity. The insanity of your alleged birthright, Israelis minting fresh citizens, you import entitlement and market it as democracy. And though your apartheid apathy acknowledges 1 million of my friends as second-class citizens among you, millions still are caught in between, unaccounted for in your governmental scheme. And that doesn't include the millions still who can only dream of one day reclaiming their ancestry. Frozen in the struggle to remain Palestinian and present to retain the essence of الزعتر والزيتون, اللوز والليمون. In the spirit of those lost, the Arab spring thaws, the sting of aching jaws, letting cries of freedom ring through bullet-battered walls. But the numbers dead here still spiral, like some stupefying defect. 1 missing, 2 lost, 3 buried, 5, 8, 11, 13. Welcome, we've grown accustomed to this pattern of killing, but when does the sequence end? Tell me, Israel, through which ethical lens does your ethnic cleansing make sense? The irony is a bit too much for me to tolerate. While your IDF soldiers are toasting l'chaim, Palestinian children are dying, our sons and daughters, prisoners of war, living on salt and water, and I don't mean tears alone. So tell me how, ya Dani Ayalon, can you deny that Palestine ever existed? How can you say with a straight face that before 48 there was nothing here but the potential for a Jewish state? Before you fed us your hate, welcome, we ate like kings in the Fertile Crescent. Doctors, lawyers, and musicians, our land was golden, the most bountiful and open. You've defiled our stunning cities and our pristine history, and yet I'll grant you amnesty. You orphan making orphans, because you have never known the sanctuary of a home, and it's no wonder you want our land for your own. Our mountains and coastline, lush green and stones which still stand to rebel against your bombshells, are a sight to remind you that your might does not negate our right to life. And I must admit, I was jealous when you sent love letters to Iran. It made me wonder, how did I ever treat you wrong? It made me wonder what possesses a throng of Americans to suit up and serve to protect another homeland which they don't deserve. With only weapons in the water, only bullets in the bread, I was knocked out from rage, stars of David round my head. Last time I yelled, hey, Ariel Pharaoh, will you let my people go? Because this land is holy and was so before your uranium blast. And at the end of the day, we both share the same Semitic past. But in the 1950s, your discriminatory policies had to confiscate our land, classifying us as absentees, though we never left sight of home. It was only out of reach as we stood helpless, caught in your checkpoints, present absentees, and watched as Jewish families commandeered Palestinian homes with food still cooking, hot on the stove, beds made and bills paid, and pets waiting on the floor, sniffing out the stranger who just walked in the door. We never abandoned our Palestine, and now as refugees we carry her spirit internationally. And Israel, we refute your dumbing down of this occupation to call it a dispute, though it's not just a semantic issue. So I will continue to resist amidst your tanks and settlements, separating, segregating in your racist strategy. Like Netanyahu, who chose you to inflict so much suffering unto me? Israel, I dream of peace, which is no substitute for justice. Israel with your barbed wire hugs, and Israel with your uranium love, and Israel with your bulletproof apathy, Israel with your affinity for make-believe. Israel, I am waiting for your liberating compassion, for you to discover your love of Palestinian Bedouins and Bashas, for this love cannot be contained, which is why love doesn't die when bodies don't remain, which is why love is all that's left, though my heart has hardened like the stone pit of an olive. Don't you see, Israel? The only way I know to give you my very best is to rip open my vest, reach into my chest, dislodge this now calcified organ, kiss my fist, and with a wish send it flying over the wall towards your settlements, which haven't settled anything at all, and hope you receive its good intent. You see, I don't resent you. We'd never move past this if I did. My life is over. I just want a better future for my kids. This rock was never meant for anything more than to knock some sense into you. Why continue war? We are one Human race, there are no walls from space. And if you could just see my face, the daughter of a catastrophe, perhaps it may inspire in you some humanity. Israel, all I do is give you time. But until you get in line, I will keep throwing these love letters from Palestine. I wrote this poem 13 years ago. It was 64 years fighting the threat of genocide, and I did not realize how weary I would grow year on year with the Hajj as we age together. May we see the end of the ongoing Nakba in our lifetime and soon at that. Thank you very much.
Wow. Dana, thank you so much. Thank you for the power of your work. Before I hand back to Sara, I'll just share a reflection that I'm sure is a reflection many of us have had over the past 20 months in particular. The reassertion of the reality that we have asserted for decades that the Palestinian struggle for liberation is not only linked to, is integral to the struggle against all forms of injustice. That has never felt more visceral and more true than right now, when the battle we're all engaged in, fighting genocide, is a battle for the type of world we want to inhabit. And I think your words, your might, does not negate our right to life, have never resonated with more power. Dana will be coming back to finish the evening tonight with another powerful poem, so make sure you stay to the end for that. And we're going to post a link in the chat to where you can explore more of her work. So thank you, Dana. I'll hand over to Sara to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you both, and just echoing that, thanks to Dana. I mean, I've heard her perform the poem a couple of times. I've heard you perform it, but every time I can't. The way that Dana manages to capture in a few short minutes all of the richness of our culture and our people, and all the complexities and the tragedies of our existence as people as well. So I'm really grateful we've had you join us here today, Dana. So now to move on to our next speaker, another brilliant contributor to this event this evening, a good friend and colleague, Ghasan Ghaben. He's joining us now. Ghasan is a Palestinian lawyer and activist. He's the founder of Reviving Gaza, a mutual aid initiative. He's the co-founder of Gaza Families Reunited campaign. And I'm also honoured to say that Ghasan currently serves as a community project consultant with the British Palestinian Committee as well. So also doing incredible amounts for Gaza, for Palestine, for our people. Ghasan, over to you.
Thank you, Sara, and thank you, Ben, for organizing this session. I'm going to speak about my experience as a Palestinian from Gaza. My family's past and present have been rooted in dispossession, survival, and resistance. My grandparents were forcefully displaced during the Nakba from the city of Al-Majdal and the village of Herbia. They left their homes with barely any belongings, believing that they would return within days. My grandmother used to say, "I just took my pillow," thinking that we would be back home in a few days. But that return never came. All my grandparents died hoping that they would return. They ended up in a refugee camp in Gaza, where my parents were born and raised, and where I was born too. I came into this world in 1990. during the First Intifada, a time of curfews, military raids, and a constant Israeli repression. My parents had to risk their lives by breaking those curfews just to get me some food and medicine. My father was imprisoned by the occupation for 9 years. I still remember some details of those few visits I made to see him behind the prison bars. All 5 of my uncles were imprisoned too. Some of them were imprisoned more than once. That's just part of what it means to grow up as Palestinian. My grandparents lived through the Nakba. My parents and I were born and raised in a refugee camp it left behind. Together, we endured the First and Second Intifada, multiple wars on Gaza, and a lifetime of dispossession and resistance. Our family's home was bombed during the 2008 war, and in this current genocide, it has been destroyed once again. My family has been displaced multiple times. Over the 77 years of the ongoing Nakba, the occupation has taken so many precious lives from among my family and friends. Others have survived countless massacres. In this genocide alone, over 60 members of my father's family and more than 100 members of my mother's family have been killed. Their lives were taken deliberately. I want to take you with me, not through headlines and statistics, but through their names and faces, through the people I loved. My cousin, Ramadan Ibrahim Ghaben, had planned to get married on the very same day that he was killed. He was sheltering in a UN building when he was murdered. Another cousin, Nahid Ghaben, only 16 years old and gifted with a beautiful singing voice, was also killed in that same building. My uncle, Dr. Osama Ghaben, who loved books, and once he helped me understand difficult Arabic grammar in my final school years. He was killed in his home, along with his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. 2 of his daughters survived, but they were badly injured, and they were evacuated to Egypt. I met them in Cairo only last month. I asked about their health, but I couldn't bring myself to mention their loss, our loss. I saw the pain in their eyes, and I knew that speaking their names might deepen the wound, but saying nothing also hurt. My dear friend, Dr. Mahmoud Abunjela, a surgeon at Al Auda Hospital. We studied together in Algeria. I remember how he treated his patients with such care and always carried a warm sense of humor. He was killed alongside 2 other doctors at the hospital. Before he was killed, he wrote on a surgical planning board, he said, "We did what we could. Remember us." My cousin, Abdurrahim, was killed with his 10-year-old daughter while trying to find food for their family. My cousins Muhammad and Lu'ay were also killed during similar desperate attempts to find food. My friend Muhammad Abu Hasira, who had been living in Dubai for the past 10 years, returned to Gaza just weeks before the genocide began to visit his family. A few months earlier, he had been messaging me, proudly talking about his two beautiful sons, Munzir and Qusay. He was killed alongside his entire family, his wife, his sons, his parents, and his siblings. The list is painfully long. I remember them. I see their faces. I say their names, and I will never stop telling their stories. The massacres are ongoing. The genocide is ongoing. The Nakba is ongoing. The occupation has destroyed homes, hospitals, bakeries, and water wells. It has cut off aid and targeted every form of infrastructure, using starvation, dehydration, and disease as weapons. Yesterday, a friend in Gaza told me that his family hadn't seen bread for more than 20 days. One of my cousins spoke about not being able to find clean water to drink. We are exhausted. Yes, we are grieving. Our people are enduring the unimaginable. We have seen the double standards. We've seen the ugliest face of this world. We've exposed the lies, and we have woken up millions around the world to the truth. And in all of this, the Zionist project is failing. It will not break our spirit. It will not raise our resistance. It will not push us into the Sinai desert. And it will never make us forget the right of return. The Nakba never ended, but neither did our resistance. For 77 years, we have fought. And if we must, we will fight for 77 more. Because our existence is resistance. This isn't just a speech for today. It's a reminder that our liberation is a long journey, one that needs all of us, steadfast, focused, and united. And we will see a free Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ghassan. I mean, I haven't really got words to respond to this, but I think just firstly, I want to thank you so much for your courage in coming and speaking to us and speaking so personally. It's incredibly courageous, and I, there are no words in terms of the loss that you've suffered personally, and obviously family and friends, and just say Allah yarhamuhum for all of your family and friends. I think just the way you spoke so powerfully, and I think something that just sat with me when you said it quite early on, you were talking about the dispossession of 1948 and your family being refugees that came to Gaza. So, and obviously that's the situation for the majority of Gaza's population, refugees from other parts of Palestine, initially from after the Nakba. And you were talking about, growing up through the first Intifada and the bombardments in 2008 and beyond. And you said, that's just what it means to grow up as a Palestinian. And I just thought, but that's not what it should mean. Like, that should not be normal. And everything you've gone through and everything that our fellow Palestinians in Gaza are going through is not normal, and it's not okay. And so, yeah, I just want to thank you for taking the time and the courage to speak to us, and for also reminding us of how important it is to stay steadfast and to resist. And and yeah, to do that. I'll stop there. Ben, I don't know if you want to add anything, otherwise.
No, just to echo Sara's thank yous. Ghasan, as you were speaking, I was what came to mind for me at one of our early marches. Ahmed Alnaouq spoke, and he said something from the stage in Whitehall. He said, "We must not normalize massacres," but that is, of course, what has happened, and the sort of fabric of this genocide is woven largely through a catalogue of horrendous statistics with which we are all familiar. This many tens of thousands dead, this many hospitals and homes destroyed. But the reality we know is that behind every single one of those statistics is a human person with hopes, with dreams, as you said, with a story that deserves to be told. So I just want to thank you for reminding us of that, and for honouring the memory of your family, and for sharing their stories with us. And I'll add as well, Ghasan is part of an organisation called Gaza Families United, and we can put a link so that people can become aware of the work that you and others are doing in that important campaigning organisation. If we can post that in the chat so people can look at that. But thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Sara, for your kind words. And looking forward to listen to the next speakers. Thank you.
Okay. Well, look, let me move on then to introduce our next guest, Selma Dabbagh. Selma is a British Palestinian writer and lawyer. She holds a master's in law from SOAS, a PhD from Goldsmith University. She's worked for human rights organizations across the world, in Jerusalem, in Cairo, in London. She's also, though, a writer, and her debut novel, Out of It, is set between Gaza, London, and the Gulf. Her wider fiction includes short stories, radio plays, as well as productions for stage and screen. And she is the editor of We Wrote in Symbols, Love and Lust by Arab Women Writers. And she's a judge for the 2025 EBRD Literature Prize. And she regularly blogs for the London Review of Books on Gaza, and is chair of the board of the Mosaic Rooms. She's giving meaning to the word polymath, and we are delighted to welcome her here tonight. Selma.
Hi, thank you, Ben, Sara, and thank you for inviting me to be in this panel. I'm really honoured and humbled by the company I'm keeping as a panelist, and particularly struck by Dana's, reading skills and her words and her poetry, and Ahmed's clarity of speech and his personal composure when he was talking about what we always hope is, unimaginable times. We always hoped were unimaginable times for us to live through. And thank you, Ben, for the generous introduction. The piece I'm going to read is like, I have to imagine Palestine from the outside. So, getting into Palestine is not easy. So a lot of my work, it's been fictionalizing a sense of place through non-fiction materials, through research, through knowing people from brief visits. And the piece that I'm going to read, I wrote almost 10 years ago now, and it's about the city of Jaffa. I was asked by a group called Words Without Borders to focus on Jaffa by Natalie Handel, the poet who was editing it at the time. And part of it, I was just rereading it in the last couple of days. I don't know, part of it you kind of feel like it sort of doesn't quite hit the tenor as to where we are at now, because it's a visualization for the future, which is positive. And we are so busy reacting to and responding to the present. It's quite hard to think of a possible future seems like the wrong place to put our efforts. But I always think that as an artist, it's really important to continue with positive visions, because I feel if we as artists and writers can't visualize something better, then what hope is there for politicians to do so? Anyway, so the piece is called That Woman Stole My Jewelry and Other Thoughts. A clock tower, domes, the sea, a port, wide boulevards, tight alleyways, orange groves, a Mediterranean climate. That much we can agree on. My father, his mother, his father's father, and mother's father, and mother's mother, and so on and so forth, were all born in Jaffa. We can count back the centuries. The names of ancestral inhabitants on the paternal side are my names too. Ali, Salim, Abdul Qadir, Mustafa. In the lithographs, the figures are small and the domes bubble up from the coastline, and the trees and orchards buffer the place at its edges. It is a paradise lost, Eden destroyed. It's been described as such. A beautifully situated city rising from the shore up its hill and set in a living girdle of palms, pomegranates, orange groves, apricot and almond trees, a mass of bloom filling the air with fragrance, as a 19th century guidebook documents. Since 1948, my father has moved many times. My mother is English and has moved with him and also moved before him. I have no plans to live. I have lived in more countries than I care to list, and I now live in London, and I have no plans to move unless what I imagine for Jaffa ever comes about, in which case I would go back as part of a national project for rehabilitation and reconciliation. My return and that of others like me would be an international event, not just an exercise of personal will. I went there once for an afternoon. I was 23. I still had the swollen, moody heart of a teenager. I was broke and broken-hearted. I took the wrong bus. I got lost. I didn't like being there. I could recognize natural beauty and international indicators of sameness, brand names, cafes, lampposts, bus stops, but the place felt askew. I could see it was a place more beautiful than most of the world, but I could not accept that in reality it was more tawdry than the places of our dreams. It was a place where I couldn't tell a Palestinian Arab from an Israeli Jew. The former could hug me and the latter spit. I couldn't tell. I didn't know. I was an outsider. The place had rules I had not grown up with. I wanted everyone to wear signs for my benefit. I ventured near the mosque where I could be certain, and when I was asked, was waved in the direction of my grandfather's furniture factory by men in slippers with defeated shoulders, and waved again down to the beach to where our house once was. I was told not to go there. No one explained why not. My grandfather was a grand man, perhaps grander than their grandfathers, and they wanted me to have tea with them on account of his possible grandness and my return. But I wanted to get away. Visiting Jaffa felt like coming to a home that has been taken over by a mistress who loathes you. She rests on your upholstery, takes down your photographs from the wall, and badmouths you to all and sundry. This imposter woman parades around in your jewelry, sleeps with your husband, and wears your clothes. Everyone says she looks great. They love her. She wants you gone. You are the bag lady screaming from the street outside. In 1948, said the Jaffa Museum's triumphant sign, Jaffa was liberated. Liberated. The mistress's face, framed by a tiara, grins behind the window. It was great. She winks at you. He loved it. I hear the line of my father's that looped around my childhood, a perpetual scar in my psyche. You don't know what it is like to leave your country on a stretcher, to leave your homeland. He was 10. The grenade was thrown from a high Jaffa cemetery down onto a street with nothing in it but children. They were targeted, and my father took the brunt of the explosion. 7 scars still remain on his body, and the shrapnel is embedded in his skull. A road near the sea, a blast. Has someone thrown a stone and hit the lamp? He wonders. Then blood running down his face, so thick he recites the Fatiha because he is convinced he is about to die. You don't know what it is like. The woman retreats from the window to lie in my upholstery, in my jewels, liberated. I imagine a Jaffa where religion is not the key determinant of friendships, allegiances, love affairs, or feuds. It is a place where one does not have to think of moving from, where immigration is an option for the minority, not a must for everyone. It's a base, a legacy, an investment, a project, a place where most people can pronounce my name and can understand the nature of diaspora, of swimming through different cultural identities. We're all adaptable people, old Palestinians, old Jews, new Jews, multilingual, urbane, industrious. In my imagined Jaffa, we're people used to leaving places with nothing but our checked-in suitcases and our educational achievements to show for ourselves. Hope defiant in our hearts, sleep provided for in capsules in our pockets. I'd like my Jaffa to be a place where I can announce my atheism if I want to. And when it's hot, I can wear a shirt with no sleeves. I'd like the old train routes back. The station in Jaffa will sell tickets to Istanbul, Cairo, Damascus, Jerusalem, Beirut, Amman, Baghdad. Why not? In my Jaffa, we channel the spirit of religions and languages to find commonalities, not righteousness and fear. A legal system that comes down hard on intolerance, and an education system that accommodates difference but stresses equality. A taxation system that pours back into the people. We become a cultural hub, an educational hub, a center for technology, design, enterprise. We export our wisdom, not our hatred. We are the most sought after consultants for all peace programs and reform projects that the world will ever need. We dislodge the reputation for killing. Eden reconstructed. My Jaffa has its problems. I don't imagine it as a place where there isn't corruption, or politicians aren't dishonest, where the innocent don't die in custody or get stabbed in the street. I don't conceive of it as being a country whose people have not gone through much horror, hatred, exile, and torture. But I like to think of it as a place on the mend, with open borders and a genuine desire for reform. As for the woman on my sofa, give me enough time, and I'm sure I can talk her around. She's getting a bit fed up with defending her jewelry. Anyway, thank you.
Wow, Selma, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I was, you provoked some personal reflections with what you were saying. I don't know if Selma's coming back on, Gabriel, maybe if you can put her back on, but I was reflecting on, my daughter's in the audience tonight, I know, and many years ago when I took her for her first visit to Palestine, and we went to where my family had lived, my grandparents in Tolbir in West Jerusalem, and spent an afternoon. And for various reasons at that time, the only mechanism we had for trying to locate the family home, now I have the full address, was an image from the internet of my grandfather sitting outside the house. So we walked through the streets trying to find this house, and we couldn't find it. And I remember the whole time thinking, what will I do if we find it? I know it's now inhabited. What will I do? How will I respond? But the other thing I was thinking about more generally, because for me, what you were presenting there was the sort of confronting the reality of exile and the sort of promise of return. I was thinking of Remy Kanazi's poem that ends with, "We will return. That is not a wish, a hope, a dream, or a threat, but a promise." But you're exploring, I think, that challenge of what does return mean? How do we visualize it? How do we visualize what a liberated Palestine looks like? Anyway, those were my thoughts and reflections on it. But thank you for the power of that. And I hope you get to return to Jaffa.
Thank you. We will. It's a promise, right?
It is a promise. It is a promise. I'm going to hand over to Sara to introduce our next guest.
Thank you, Selma. I just wanted to add my thanks, Sarah, as well. I think you captured so beautifully an experience of exile, which, affects, half of our population as Palestinians, right? We're sort of 7 out of 14 million who are refugees or in exile in some way. So I think that was really, really powerful. Now, turning to our final, last but definitely not least guest with us today, who is Ahmed Alnaouq, good colleague, friend, and many of you will already know him and recognize him, I'm sure. He looks like he's joining us now. Hi, Ahmed.
Hi.
Ahmed Alnaouq is a journalist. He's a human rights activist based in London. He's the co-founder of and director of We Are Not Numbers and a journalist with Palestine Deep Dive. Ahmed holds a degree in English literature from Al-Azhar University in Gaza and an MA in international journalism from Leeds University, where he was a Evening Scholar. And as many of you, I'm sure, would have seen and hopefully bought a copy, Ahmed has recently published a book called We Are Not Numbers, which perhaps we'll talk a little bit about after your intervention, Ahmed, because I think it's a really important contribution to our struggle. So thank you for that. Ahmed, I will turn over to you.
Thank you, Sara, and thank you, Ben, for having me. As you know, I was raised up in Gaza, and I attended honorable schools when I was young. And honorable schools were only for refugees in Gaza. And the term Nakba was always there at our school because we were all a bunch of refugees, young people who their parents or grandparents were ethnically cleansed from Palestine 48. But for some reason, every time I would hear the word Nakba, I would remember my father. And I think I remember my father every time someone mentioned the Nakba because my father was born on the year of the Nakba. My father was born in 1948. And then as I grew up, when I was a little kid, as 5 or 6 years old, I would remember and I hear the stories about the Nakba and the day that my father came to life when his grandmother was giving birth to my father, and then Israel dropped a bomb on the market in Deir al-Balah, killing 150 Palestinians, including my great-grandparents. And I always remember the Nakba when I remember my father when we talk about the Nakba, and I remember the Nakba when we talk about my father because I always say that my father was born during the first Nakba and he was killed during the second Nakba. But my father also resembles Palestine, and Palestine resembles my father. My father was born in 1948, and ever since he witnessed all the wars and aggressions and the occupation on the Palestinians. I don't remember how many wars did my father attend or lived or went through. 1948 and the Nakba before that, 1967, 1973, and all the second Intifada and the first Intifada and all the wars that were launched in Gaza. He attended all of these wars. He lived under the occupation. He lived under the siege in Gaza. He was forced to leave university, to quit university, to attend to his family. And he was a very simple man. And in his simplicity, he resembled Palestine. My father was one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. He was the most compassionate people. He had this photographic memory. At the age of 75, he would still recite his lessons that he used to study when he was only 10 and 12 and 13 years old. Nonetheless, he could not go to college because he had to work and to provide for his family. He was a very hard worker, like all the Palestinians. And despite being a hard worker and very talented, he had always been very poor. He was an unfortunate waste talent, like many other Palestinians. But yet, he raised 9 children, like many other Palestinians who like to have a lot of children because they know that someday they will lose some of them to the Israeli occupation. He raised 9 children. He raised engineers, lawyers, teachers. He sent us all to college. He was working day and night as a worker, as a laborer, and then as a taxi driver to afford our colleges. All of his children were highly educated. All of them had good jobs, despite living in Gaza and having to live under siege and occupation. He raised all of us to be decent, good people who care for their family and who care for their people. And then eventually, and by the way, my father lived 75 years. He was born in the first Nakba. He was killed in the second Nakba. And for 75 years, my father was apolitical. He never belonged to any political party. He never joined politics. He never belonged to Hamas or Fatah or any political party. He was a very simple man. He never hurt Israel in any way. He never hurt Israel in any way. He didn't even throw a rock at Israel. But yet Israel imprisoned him once and twice and 3 times for no reason, 24 hours or 48 hours, and then they released him, like many other Palestinians, like the 80% of the Palestinian people who lived under the occupation. And then my father had to witness Israel kill his son in 2014, and then kill his wife, my mother, in 2020, because they did not allow her to receive treatment for her cancer. And then eventually, in the second Nakba, in October 2023, Israel bombed my home where my father was, and they killed him, and they killed his children and all his grandchildren. They killed him and another 20 members of his family, 20 of his children and grandchildren. That was my father. My father resembled Palestine. He was a very simple man. He was not sophisticated, but he wasn't highly educated, but he was very talented. And he cared a lot for Palestine, and he cared a lot for everyone. And that's why Israel killed him. Because for him, for Israel, being a Palestinian is a threat. Being a Palestinian is wrong enough that you deserve to die. But you know, my father also resembled hope. He testified to the hope of the Palestinians. You know, my father had a very difficult life. All of his life, he was working very, very hard just to maintain his life. But at the same time, he was always very, very hopeful. I remember a few days before he was killed, I called my father, and I was in London, and he was in Gaza enduring the genocide. And I already heard that we ran out of water, and my family were like struggling to get clean water. And I asked him, "How are you, my father?" And he said, "We're fine, we're good. As long as we are breathing, we are alive. We will endure," he told me. "We will endure whatever is happening." He never seemed to be rash or angry or not content for the situation that's in Palestine. He was always hopeful, and he always thought that eventually Palestine will be free. He was like glowing with hope all the time. And that is the Palestinian people. Despite whatever is happening to us, despite a genocide, I think the Palestinians will always glow hope, because we are a people who love life, who deserve to live. We deserve to live. And from that, like my father, I always to glow hope. I always to send messages of hope to the world, that despite whatever is happening to us, despite the genocide, we know that Palestine will be free one day. We know Palestine will be free. And I know now we live in times where genocide is normalized. Where killing children in thousands and tens of thousands is normalized, like Muhammad al-Kurd bin Jamal just said. We know it's irregular times. This is not sane world. I know it's not normal. But I know that eventually, those who cling to their rights, those who care for the country, those who do not give up, they will never be wasted, and they'll eventually get their rights. And that's why even 77 years after the Nakba, and even during the 77 years of occupation and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, we still Palestinians and non-Palestinians, thousands of miles away from our country, here in the UK, we still commemorate the Nakba, and we still talk about the Nakba, and we still share and tell the stories that we heard from our parents and grandparents, because we will never give up on the Palestinian people, and we will never give in, because we are Palestinians, just like them. Thank you.
Ahmed, thank you so much. Ahmed, let me just say this and share this with the people listening tonight. I have had the immense honor on many occasions in the past 20 months of standing beside you on protest stages in Parliament, as you did in front of MPs, do what you've just done here, honor the memory of your family, give testimony to their stories, and manifest in your own person the Palestinian spirit of Samud, the refusal to submit. So I thank you for your courage, but people will know, and we've just posted a link in the chat, the extraordinary work that Ahmed has done for many years as the co-founder of We Are Not Numbers, a project designed to give a platform to Palestinian voices, to make sure that Palestinian writers and artists get the platform that they deserve. Do you want to say just a couple of words about that work, but also in particular, and we've just put a link, the extraordinary new book that you've just brought out, which I'm so proud to say went immediately into the Times bestseller list and deserves to be so. And I would urge every single person here tonight, if you haven't bought this yet, follow the link and buy this book. But Ahmed, do you want to say just a few words about We Are Not Numbers and this amazing book that you just published?
Thank you very much, Ben. I think, Ben, this book, it became a bestseller Sunday, an instant Sunday bestseller. Do you know why? Because people here in the UK, people here in the UK are sick and tired of hearing the mainstream media and how they portray the Palestinians, how they depict the Palestinians, how they talk about the Palestinians. And in this book and in We Are Not Numbers, we are trying to send messages and stories of life from Gaza to the world. In this book, you will find 74 stories that were written from Gaza to the world. And in our website, you will find thousands of stories that we have been written during the past 10 years. Stories of life, stories of death, stories of lived experiences from young people in Gaza that defy the mainstream narrative of the Palestinians, as we are all terrorists live under the rubble, as we are just statistics, as we are numbers. No, we are people who deserve to live. We are people who have talents, who have stories, who have history, who have culture, who have civilizations. And we, through these stories, through our lived experiences, we are sharing to the world, we are drawing a picture for Palestine, about Palestine, that the people deserve to know. We are sick and tired of criticizing the mainstream media all the time. And with We Are Not Numbers and the project like We Are Not Numbers, we are defying the mainstream media by building an alternative to the mainstream media when it comes to Palestine. And the reason why it became an instant bestseller is because everyone here in the UK knows that the truth. Everyone knows that this is a fact, that the mainstream media don't care about the Palestinians, that they don't give a damn about the Palestinian narrative and the Palestinian stories. And if we, the Palestinians, don't write our stories and share it with the world, no one will ever will. And there is an African proverb that I like, and I always say, until the lion learns how to write every story, will glorify the hunter. Now, the Palestinians will write their stories and they will share it with the world. And that's why it's important that people come and get a copy of our book, read our stories from this book or from our website, and share these stories that were written by the young Palestinians with the world. Some of those who wrote these stories were killed in the genocide. Many of these writers who wrote their stories lost loved ones, lost family members, like all the other Palestinians. And these people, they deserve to have their stories shared and read and heard and immortalized in library and in bookshelves, even at your home.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, and thank you for all of your hard work with this book and We Are Not Numbers and Palestine Deep Dive. Your Baba sounds like an incredible man. It makes me wish that I'd had the privilege to know him. And I think that line that you said that in his simplicity he resembled Palestine just really stayed with me. And I know he'd be incredibly proud of what you're doing. So Ali Arhamo. And again, thank you so much for your courage and for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, we're coming towards the end of our time together this evening. So I think, first of all, I just want to reiterate a huge thank you to all of our guest speakers. And as I say, mainly for their courage in being willing to come and share such personal testimony that really speaks to such the variety of and the complexities of our being as a people, as Palestinians in all the various forms, but also how united we are in our desire and our willingness to remain steadfast and keep fighting and keep resisting and keep existing. I also want to thank everybody who's been following us online this evening. I know many of you are doing a lot of things in terms of being in solidarity with Palestinians. And I think for me personally, being in the company here of fellow Palestinians always gives me a renewed sense of strength and hope, and helps to focus really on that day that will come when our people no longer need to be this source of inspiration, no longer need to be courageous in this dark world. You know, when we can just live ordinary lives that people all deserve to live, simple, ordinary lives. But I do want to take a moment before handing back to Ben to talk a bit more about concrete actions to just recognise the incredible level of solidarity in this country. You know, a number of our speakers have referenced it. To all our friends out there who have taken to the streets week in and week out, who are writing to MPs, complaining to media outlets, taking all kinds of actions. And I know that many of our family and friends back home in Palestine see these demonstrations that are organised by PSC and the coalition partners and are taking heart from the solidarity on the streets. I know also, as you know, in our work at British Palestinian Committee, we do a lot of work with MPs, and when we meet with MPs and they tell us that their constituents care, that their constituents are writing to them, it gives us an opportunity to speak with them and work with them and try and help get more and more people speaking out for Palestine. And so with that, just again, big thank you to you all. And I'll pass on to Ben to talk a little bit about some of the concrete actions that we can be taking over the next week and obviously months and years until we reach that point of liberation, which is inevitable.
Thank you, Sara. And let me echo your thanks to every one of our guests who's spoken tonight, and for all of you for joining us. Look, in my concluding remarks, I want to just repeat something I said earlier. The truth that we have been reasserting, that our struggle for liberation is central to the struggle against all forms of injustice. One of my personal sporting heroes, the footballer and would-be philosopher Eric Cantona, recently reasserted this truth when he said, if Gaza is lost, then humanity is lost. He was reminding us that right now we are engaged in a fundamental battle for the type of world we want to live in and we want our children to inhabit. Do we want it to be a world where rights are the possession of the powerful? Or do we want it to be a world based on principles of justice and equality, where rights belong to everyone, regardless of religion, ethnicity, race, or nationality? Our struggle for a better world is one that has to be founded on the hope that is the wellspring of all solidarity, a hope manifested by every one of our speakers tonight, a hope that has been the cornerstone of 77 years and more of Palestinian Samud, a hope manifested in the words of our great brother Ghasan Ghaben, who couldn't be with us tonight, the words that he delivered to students in Glasgow when he told them, it is your world to fight for, it is your tomorrow to make. We will own tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a Palestinian day. So we have to continue to build this community of resistance that we are building in the UK, that we are building globally. Let me give you a final reminder. Please take part in our week of action. Head to the Week of Action page on our website. The link is in the chat. Click on the images, take action every day. And most importantly, if you are here in the UK on Saturday, join us again in the streets of London, where once more we will bring this message of solidarity, this message of hope, this message of resistance to the streets of the capital in our hundreds of thousands. And let me hand over to finish this evening once more to the amazing poet Dana Dajani, who will finish with a reading of her poem, I Choose to Be Palestinian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Ben, and Selma, and Ahmed, and Ghassan, and everybody who worked behind the scenes to make this happen, and everyone who's tuned in. I'd like to end tonight with a poem of mine called I Choose to Be Palestinian. I choose to be Palestinian. I choose. I can. Because my identity is my own to create. It's no one's business to affirm, bestow, or prescribe upon me. No need to defend my identity because it comes from within. I choose to be Palestinian. It's not a box to check, a club to join, or a lifestyle demographic. Trust me, I choose to be Palestinian, and it has nothing to do with my ancestry. I choose to be Palestinian because I believe in dignity, in justice and humanity, in perseverance, in resilience. Say it, Palestinian. I believe that David beat Goliath. I believe that all human beings are Messiah. I believe that every land is holy. All people are chosen. No burning bush had to tell me. I choose to be Palestinian, and I believe that we are not broken beyond repair. Even after living through our Holocaust, the depths of our despair in Nakba, in Naksa, and now Gaza. من النهر إلى البحر نحن الفلسطينية. I choose to be Palestinian, even though they don't play fair. They don't play. They don't. They. I choose to be Palestinian with or without a nationality. I choose that identity. I can, because my identity is my own to create. So I choose not to be the victim, and I resist the fate they perpetuate. I choose to be Palestinian and step into a new day where the graves of Jerusalem aren't dug up as prime real estate to witness the trumpets of Judgment Day. Tourists flock in mass, religious holiday, a photo to take, unholy vacation. While locals are shepherded through checkpoints and barriers. We could have heaven on earth if we stopped waiting for a savior. Let it start in Palestine. Is the name triggering? Very well, let's call it something else then. Won't change the fact that I choose to be Palestinian. I choose to be Palestinian and give a voice to this pain and this love and this hope and this willingness to change. I choose to find new patterns and new ways, a common meeting place. We already inhabit it. Say it. Say it. We are Palestinians. عاشت فلسطين. Thank you so much.